do have something, but I want to let somebody else go first if anybody
Okay.
has anything other than me.
So I would need to read something that is not mine, and B, I unfortunately was caught lacking a little bit. I had to go handle something else right before it started. So I'm currently making tea right now.
Okay.
So yeah.
Huh.
Um, I guess I have some work in progress ones. Uh, let's uh or take a pick between work in progress and just have not really put it out anywhere. Uh, poem. Someone choose between those two.
I I vote work in progress personally.
Okay. Okay.
I do too.
All right. This is vagrant convention. I saw Hashem in the dish, swirling in the synagogue rinse pit. Driving Zion mad, spy Miss Lonely Heart across the way, watch young Moses dance among the Fae. Yet the roving, wild, desperate band sit, polished Tajet, eye and cage stray, as peddler Lars, prince of patriarch, throws a fit. Vacant future high rises stand at attention, fixed in Moses's moonlit barley field, hair swish, vixen tumbling out, guard dog you can outwit, scarred Hanwun dryad. That's it's just a very small thing for now. Uh,
That was neat.
Lovely.
yeah. Who else got? Who else got stuff they're working on? Or
I was gonna say
also
honestly,
also
you
hi.
you could read the other thing as well since it wasn't very long.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Let me get that one up. Extreme Extreme Cold by Cynthia Doll. That's the name of the poem. Uh, Soft sweet red meat, tide comes in, walk uneasy along the lock. A levy was imposed. I don't want to be your friend. I just want the end of perpetual pain, fear, and disgust. Bell's boat bounces under Denver night lights, gleaming like mountain goat cassettes, reflecting the signs of a dying empire. The sun is gonna come home again, introduce her and it to leaving Dallas. I have always wanted to die on the Bolt bus, her eyes closing with credits scrolling through ancient mountains, a crowd where painted faces do not shift out the unadorned, wherein a bailiff, where no one traces the devil to his axe. In the brooms my dog Rose heart is made to tame and settle itself, to reach across the world. The price of a yard of linen, one must be ready to abandon the world. The clatter of friendship making in kitchen, cannibal hostess dances from guest to guest. Ramble on, tranny, ramble on, till you crash. This year will be a year of angels mending. If it kills me, echoes in the highway tunnels, spending the twilight to rehash struggles with deft words, to resist defending ruins of religion, raining down ash. Protest! Illusions none of us are depressed after conspiracy killed one earthly beast named fantasy.
That was cool. I interesting minor synchronicity with Denver being a location because I was reading in a Monica fan fiction I was reading, one of the girls is named Denver because that's her territory.
What's the fan? What was the fan fiction?
It's called Chicago. It's by it's by Bavitz, if you've heard of him.
I don't know if I have.
Yeah, I
He
liked that.
Thank you.
I also happen to have two things.
okay.
One is a poem, and the other is a work in progress bit of fiction.
Okay, let's hear both of them.
All right. Which first do you think?
Work in progress.
All right. So this does not have a title yet, but here it goes. No one was sure exactly how President Cannon had gotten the job. A bizarre situation had unfolded whereby, due to the inability of Congress to certify the electoral vote, and the Speaker of the House being a naturalized citizen, the President pro tempore of the Senate was next in line to attain to the highest office in the land. Unfortunately, since the sitting president had prorogued the Senate in order to make last-minute recess appointments for his final days in office, mainly movie stars that he'd always wanted to hang out with, there was technically no sitting president pro tempore. However, a single senator from Wyoming had decided to boycott the prorogation and showed up to his job about 15 minutes late as always, and decided, in the interests of maintaining proper parliamentary procedure, to draft and vote on a resolution electing an acting president pro tempore, which, unsurprisingly, passed unanimously. In a display of remarkable modesty, and in the absence of any other senators who'd be willing to show up, he nominated the St. Paul regional director of the National Indian Gaming Commission on the basis that he, quote unquote, ran that damn place like the Navy and, quote, made sure his most loyal customers got the big wins they deserved, unquote. One day later, said regional director arrived in Washington to carry out his duties. One day after that, and he was being sworn in as president. President Cannon himself had spent his whole life expecting this to happen. In his inaugural speech, he cited a quote-unquote powerful vision he had when he was a teenager, one that it took reporters a few minutes to realize he meant that word in the literal supernatural sense. In his vision, he would be installed as president by a simultaneous apparition of the Virgin Mary and George Washington, both 8 feet tall, both carrying immense pies. The pies have a spiritual meaning, he said. One represents it represents friendship, and the other pie represents the flag. Leaked messages from White House staffers soon revealed he was disappointed that the Virgin Mary and George Washington did not visibly show up, although he immediately resolved this trouble for himself by announcing to his staff that they had appeared in the ether, and that's what really counts. Seized by the thought that he, quote unquote, needed to squeeze out the message through the meddler boards, his own term for the news media, the origin of which he has always jealously obscured. He wrote what could only be called by the most reductive definition of the term, a book. Coming in at a whopping 2,786 pages, mitigated slightly by the fact that it was formatted entirely in 70-point font. It had less the tone of a best-selling memoir or a philosophical document than an extended and highly fragmentary drunken monologue, each page containing at least 3 new unverifiable assertions, as if an uncle estranged from the rest of the family were trying to teach you the principles of electronic engineering, despite seemingly not ever having come across the word transistor in his life. There was no real through line that could be easily discerned, but there were a few themes that kept returning to in and between anecdotes about difficult customers and specially written prayers to the crystal heart of Jesus. Firstly, there were a numbered series of principles, a word that he not only always personally capitalized and put in quotation marks, but demanded that transcribers of his speeches treat with the same reference. They were numbered out of order, and some seemed to be missing. But Cannon swore that they were a blueprint for revitalization not only of the country, but also of the whole planet and even the galaxy. Now, I'm just a good boy from Minnesota, he announced in his inaugural speech. But I can assure you, the principles I live my life on are time-tested, ancient as the city of Agartha, and yet fresher than a can of pop on a pig sweating day. The principles ranged from oddly phrased mixes of cliches. If you piss in the wind, don't tell me it's raining on you. Principle number 83. Never put all your eggs in the basket. Principle number 407. To what he seemed to think was common sense advice. If you're starting a business, you must be able to weather the heathen as he rages. Principle number 72. To the truly bizarre. Don't sweat the small stuff like a missing sock. It all just gets recycled in the ether like it should. Principle number 8. When pressed for explanation about some of the more odd and offensive passages in the book, he would simply reply, "You guys clearly didn't get to principle number 87, with a genuinely wounded look on his face. There is no principle number 87 in the book, and no record of canon reciting it exists anywhere. Secondly, there was something of a plan for America. This was the most controversial part, likely because the book was at its most coherent when discussing this. Step 1 was to get rid of the income tax and replace it with a quote-unquote national balance tax. It's not fair that the IRS takes away a part of what you earn for yourself. But when you're in too much debt, it's only fair that some of it debt should be taken away and given to whoever has the least debt, unquote. When a panel of highly agitated economists noted that this was just another form of income tax, and a very poorly thought out version at that, President Cannon called into CNBC to explain, well, it's not really, because an income tax is taking what you got, and the national balance tax is actually giving you what you don't got in a way. More controversial was step 2, which was, quote, to ban the devil religion and devil worship of all kinds, such as Shiva worship and Shia Islam, in order to restore the Crystal Heart and Virgin Mary into their proper throne. The initial uproar over what appeared to be the blatant Islamophobia and Hinduphobia in this passage soon gave way to confusion, as other passages contain effusive praise for nearly every other religion, including Sunni Islam and the Vaishnava branch of Hinduism. The original name, the original name of the devil in the Sumerian language was Shaitan, and this is where all evil words come from. The passage then proceeds to list a series of further, quote-unquote, evil words, explains how Shaivism and Shia Islam are, quote-unquote, grotesquely inverted parodies of the original intentions of Krishna and Muhammad, and then concludes on a warning that speaking evil words aloud too often can create, quote, sickly vibrations that make earthquake, unquote. Indeed, nearly all of the plan, also containing such steps as creating a militarized anti-littering task force, renaming the months of the calendar from, e.g., January and August to Colden Time and Swelter Days, putting all of the country under mountain time, and allocating $30 billion to an educational program to get people to take their shoes off in the house, were justified by the last and most astonishing running theme of the book, which explicated President Cannon's personal worldview, including an elaborate cosmology and a history of human civilization dating back millions of years earlier than conventionally accepted dates. The Rockies have always been there, one passage nestled between a meatloaf recipe and another meatloaf recipe helpfully explains. That's where we first emerged out of the underground caves we first were born in. That's all I got so far.
I love
cute.
this.
That was good.
Legitimately more interesting than most presidential administrations we've had up to this point.
Thank you.
This is
That was.
it reminds
Oh,
me
go
a
ahead.
lot of it. I was gonna say it's like if you It's like if you took Borges and the Luminaris trilogy and then like smash those together, but also like filter the but also like have you ever heard of the band Rasputina?
I think I have.
Yeah, they have a song of the Contractors, and it remind a lot of it like how you were reading it reminds me of that, and like just very good.
Thank you.
I
Thank you. Thank you.
it was a little funny to me that that one of the pies symbolized the flag, which is itself a symbol.
Yeah. I wrote that entire thing. It's still like unfinished. I want to like add more to it and polish it a bit more, but yeah, I was inspired by the Rukhnama, which was the book written by uh let me find like his proper name. It was the book written by Sapar Murat Niyazov, who was formerly the president of Turkmenistan. He changed his name to Turkmenbaşı, which means like the head of the Turkmen. And he did things like renaming the month of April after his mother and replacing the driving test with like a quiz on his book. And so I just wanted to imagine like what the American equivalent of that could be. And it would have to be like something along the lines of like Lawsonomy, right? Just like a guy who like mixes together just like half remembered proverbs and like complete original crackpot theories into like a full cosmology of the universe that he wants to like sign into law.
Um, do you have next thing the what was the other thing you had?
This one is I think probably in its fullest form. And I can actually link it in the chat for those of you who would like to read along. Let me just do that real quick. Yeah, it's titled, this is titled In Her Garage for the New Pandemic. And here it goes. Gently does she take in hand the vial with the virus, the tiny little murderer, which she took from the cells of a sparrow whose life it had claimed the night before, Om Namu Amida Butsu Soaka, and spun out mixed with phenol and chloroform and pulled from a glass of Everclear and unscrews the little cap to drop it into the mineral oil filling the aluminum block that is the stomach of the thermal cycler that she assembled the day before. It's amazing what a girl can do with an Arduino, some shop tools, and the last of last year's Christmas money. She rushes to her laptop to write a command, heat the substance to 97C, then cool it down to 50 for half a minute, then heat it back up to 72 and dashes back to her aluminum athanor to pour in the Taq polymerase. This she does again and again, her body as much a part of the machine as the machine is a part of her body. Then she stretches from her little labyrinth to write in a new command, back down to 37 degrees, back to the oily stomach she goes to fortify it with a restriction enzyme. For 4 hours she waits, monitoring with constant care of the machine, activating with gentle heat the enzyme, digesting away the unnecessary foods, arranging the virus into neat little lines, before she burns it off at 65 degrees. Off to the aludel, aka the microlab, where into the glass she puts the strands with another enzyme, T7, and methylated psi, and 4 triphosphates and tris hydrochloride, and here she warms it at 37 degrees Celsius, the same as her chest that so carefully breathes, in and out, nervous yet calm, with hope of what is to come. 4 hours more she watches over the mixture, then adds deoxyribonuclease that decomposes the DNA she no longer needs, then pulls out the glass from the mini lab and stirs in a solution of magnetic beads which binds them to the tails of the mRNA strands and spins the solution in a centrifuge to get what she needs. Into another machine, she places the albedo, forcing it through a sterile membrane, squeezing out any accumulated crud, so that only her philosopher's stone remains. Elated, her heart leaps at the sight, but she baits her breath and carefully scrapes it into a sterile patent with a lovely citrate buffer, where she will poke it and prod it with gels and electrodes and triethylammonium acetate to ensure it is pure, pure enough to hurt her but leave her shaking body alive. 4 fats she pours into a glass of Everclear, an ionizable lipid, a phospholipid, some cholesterol, some polyethylene glycol. And to one more machine she turns to repeal, her microfluidic mixer, which marries the fats and the acid, a chemical wedding par none, whose children will be our children for 1,000 years to come. Some vinegar and citric acid, some sugar and salt. She hums to herself as she mixes these, a sweet little recipe, and pours in her philosopher's stone and dilutes it just to the point where it will make just enough proteins that the body can overpower them and remember for later usage how to kill the real thing. Into myriad vials the elixir goes, into the freezer the vials go, save for one she saves, and into which she sticks a needle and calms her trembling hand to draw out the slimy liquid and stick it into her shoulder. Wincing, she presses the plunger and heaves a sigh, knowing that the night of pain she is in for will, if she spilled not one drop of blood, strengthen her, one little battle she fought, one more pawn she captured, in the game she has joined against death.
That rocked. I really enjoyed the scientific accuracy.
Thank you. I was trying to write this simultaneously as a pay-on to and rough guide to DIY vaccine manufacturing.
All right, rejointed Holmes. Do you have are you ready to read what you were going to read?
So yes, I did have a bit of a change of plans.
Mm.
Since everyone's doing works in progress, I figure it's okay for me to do similar.
Mm-hmm.
Um, One is a poem that I was working on with Cara Parcel, actually,
Mm-hmm.
doing some sort of poetic exercises. And so this is a little bit hastily combined from notes of that. And another, at risk of some embarrassment, is a attempt to be a troubadour in regards to writing a love poem to the wrestler known as Rhea Ripley, possibly stealing lesbian valor in that pursuit, but oh well, that's an aside. but we'll get to that when we get to that. A fair warning on that, it did eventually wind up being the case of I needed to just rip out the lines I had in my head and just kind of get it over with because I wound up working on that for like a year with little to no progress. So if it winds up being a little bit cringe, oh well, so goes. But the first poem. This was your fate once, by the good God yours no more, to weep for the chariots of kinslayers wearing the skins and talons and beaks of eagles. A heart breaks for the patinaed statues of kings and Christs, because the bronze was never taught how. Because when walking just as the trees write their last leaves in the winter dusk, in splendid baroque of gold and red decay, an echo of a breeze leaves sparrow's body with the last syllable on your shoulders bear witness. Not like the hills of green, rendered in the watercolor, canvas drops and bleeds on the swallowing fog, drawn distance into a dull evergreen, more green than the green of constant waking, not like that somnic baptism under pierced clouds of dawning red. And that is the end of the first poem.
That was neat.
The second.
Lovely.
Oh, thank you. The second, A Troubadour's Ode to Rhea Ripley. I can't rest until my ribs bent inward strike the stranger words chambered in my throat and propel them skyward to burn a shooting star for you. If my song offends you, when I crash your feast of pomegranates and black pearls over a bed of broken dates, if my lyrics offend you, when I say I envy your shoulder blades, guarding your spine from those who would know your sacred geometries, if my hands offend you, when I say I want to crown your back with a white fur coat and watch your choker become a leather halo and your eyes become thunderstorms, if my words offend you, may you demonstrate your connate right to mark my face forever with the love in your violence. For far too long I was made the hammer. Cast me with your hands into the shape of an anvil, and may that anvil be of use to you, and I pray that use be tenderness.
That is great. I love that.
Well, thank
Yeah, that
you.
was cute.
I have often myself thought about how great it would be to be um punished by Rhea Ripley. So I can relate.
Well, I'm glad we have a sense of mutual understanding then, my friend.
All right.
Yeah, does anybody else have anything else they'd like to read? All right. Well, oh, yes? Yes? Of course there's time. I mean, this is a relatively shorter and smaller one, so of course there's time. The first one went for like 2.5 hours.